go ahead and call the joint meeting of the Affordable Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust Board to order. Now I'm going to go ahead and read the remote participation text. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, public bodies otherwise governed by the OML are temporarily relieved from the requirement that meetings be held in public spaces and open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberation through adequate and alternative means. This meeting of the Affordable Housing Committee and Trust will be live on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by joining Zoom meeting ID number of 818-0509-7403 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Alicia Hershey at ahershey@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 142 prior to the meeting. All right, so I've called the meeting to order. And can I just, I'm going to call, all right, Robert, forgive me, all right? Can I call both meetings or do I need somebody? I mean, I'm going to call the committee and then I'm going to go to the board.
Right, you can call the committee and then somebody from the trust should call them to order.
Okay, all right, so I just called the meeting to order. Can someone from the trust go ahead and call the meeting to order as well? Bob, are you trying to say it?
So done. I call the meeting to order.
All right, thank you, Bob. All right, now in general business, seeing that it's one agenda, is there anything that people want to discuss with regards to the agenda right now? Do we have the presentation of the Devon's Crest Tenants Association, really the only item on the agenda? Is there any discussion?
I move to approve the agenda.
All right, so Bobby
Second it.
and Sean seconds it. Let's do a roll call on the trust. All right, bear with me. Cindy.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Pat. Are you shaking your head, Pat? Okay. Sean.
Aye.
Okay, and I think that's it. Can I hear a motion on the committee to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion that the Ayer Affordable Housing Committee approve the agenda of tonight's meeting.
Okay, Ken, thank you, makes the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, Ron seconds. All right, let's get a roll call. Ken?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Okay. Woo! Got through that part. Let's go ahead and I think if there's nothing else, let's move right into the presentation by the Devon's Crest Tenants Association. And I believe I can hand it over to Connie.
Great. Good evening, Madam Chair, to the committee members and the trust members. Thank you for your time this evening. As you know, this has been a long, hard road that the Devon's Crest Tenants Association has been on for the last 4 years, and things are coming to a head finally. As you know, we were successful in getting the property under contract with Brady Sullivan, and joining me tonight is Rick Hankin from the Shockey Companies, the development partner, who's teamed up with DCTA for this project. Our purpose in meeting tonight is to request some monies from the trust as part of the town's local contribution for this project. And as you're all probably very well familiar, the state, when funding these projects with grants, is always looking for a local contribution. This project, as I indicated in the kind of the summary that was, I think, disseminated with the agenda. It's a $40 million project. We have applied for $10.8 million in monies from the state of Massachusetts. And to leverage that, we're looking for the Affordable Housing Trust to provide some funding. We have gone before the Community Preservation Committee, I believe it was in May, and requested 570,000. We're not trying to double dip. Well, we're looking for a total of 570,000 from both the Community Preservation Committee and/or the trust. Timing, however, is critical, and Rick Hankin may be able to go into a little bit more detail. But as you know, for the Community Preservation Committee to approve funding for this project as the town's contribution, it is subject to a town meeting vote in October. And we have a closing date that actually comes up before that October town meeting. And so in order to leverage the state funds we need for the closing, we're looking for the trust to be able to provide us with some funding. And we will be asking tonight that the trust consider providing funding in the amount of $240,000. Alicia was very helpful in providing me some figures. She indicated that as of today's date, there's not $240,000 available to the trust, but there will be come July 1st, which is the beginning of the next fiscal year. And I understand that we would need a public hearing anyway for any monies that the trust may consider providing as part of the town's local contribution to this project. That's all that I had to say. I'd like at this point to turn the meeting over to Rick Hankin, if I may, Madam Chairman, the president and CEO of the Shotgut Companies, our development partner. Rick?
Thank you. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And of course, thanks to all of you folks to come out tonight and consider our request. Also with me from Shotgut is Bert Rodiger, who's our Vice President of Development and Acquisitions, with decades of experience with state and federal funding and sort of all of the programs that we're get ourselves involved with. I think, Connie, you summarized where we stand brilliantly. It's been a long road. It was a challenge, as you all know, to get Brady Sullivan to agree to sell it to a preservation buyer. That was the first hurdle. The next big hurdles were to find a way to structure the deal to be able to raise enough money to pay Brady Sullivan for the property and to finish the renovations of 35 unrenovated units, as well as all of the other fees and costs and lawyers and all of the other costs to be able to close the transaction. From the outset, the public support in terms of the electeds and EOHLC, the secretary himself, as well as senior staff, has been more enthusiastic than anything I've seen in my career. The state, as you know, Senator Eldridge was able to get an earmark to help the tenants a while back, to help DCTA. And it was a phone call, a Zoom call with Secretary Augustus, myself, and Shane Brady that actually finally got Brady to agree after so many forces had beaten him down. Thank you, DCTA. Thank you, advocates. Thank you, faith community, into submission. And so on a call with the secretary, he agreed to a price, and we've been working ever since to try to be able to pay him that price. And the challenge is to find all of the money to be able to pay him. And you know, as Connie said, from the outset, we've been able to secure $10.8 million in state grants to help us to preserve affordability, so to indirectly subsidize the rents, and to complete the construction, which we figure all in will be approaching $6 million. And the plan is to start renovating units the day we close. As we expect that we will keep 3 units vacant. We will renovate those starting the day we close. We will then temporarily relocate residents into one of those rehab units and then go work on those units. And then give the resident the option of either staying where they are or moving back to the unit that's now been renovated. In addition to 10.8 million of subsidy going into the deal in the form of a grant, the state has also agreed to provide us with 35 MRVPs, vouchers, which we will project base so that they will live not with the resident who benefits from them, but with that unit for as long as MRVP is available. And we will be committing to take MRVP subsidy for as long as it's available. And as you all know, that allows residents to pay 30% of their income for housing. So it takes care of the folks who need deep subsidy and just, can't even pay a tax credit rent because, that's 30% of 60% as opposed to just 30% of their income. The capital sources are going to be most likely Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac debt, private equity, which is a challenge in and of itself, and the 10.8 million of state funding. As Connie put so well, in order to leverage state funds, every time you walk into the state and are looking to use these types of funds, they always ask, do you have the town's support? And, back when I was young and naive, I would say, well, I can get you a letter. And that flew for about a minute. And so they're always requiring some financial commitment from the town. And that's, they're reasonable, and that's balanced in part, by ability to pay. So, Bert and I are working on a deal where, the city of Boston wrote us a check for $6.5 million to match $6.5 million from the state. Obviously, Ayer doesn't have those kinds of resources, and so the state is sensitive to that. But it's very important to them that financial commitment be demonstrated. We're trying to get all of our sources of funding ready to come in the door for an October closing. And my fear is that without a firm commitment of funds from the town, it's going to delay the state's willingness and ability to sign on the dotted line for the rest of that money, which is why we really appreciate you all taking the time to hear us today. One of the thoughts that we hit on as we were talking about, splitting the 570 and not double dipping, was we were concerned that to get the CPC funding, we can't represent in good faith to the state until town meeting that we've got the funds. And so that concerned us. But then we came to understand that we could bring this to you all, and you can unilaterally call a public hearing, I guess. And if I have the specifics wrong, you can tell me. Unilaterally call a public hearing, and you can approve the funds at that public hearing, which means that we can walk into the state well advance of needing their check to show up with, a real financial commitment from Ayer, which is why we're, why we're here now and asking, as Connie said, for 240,000, which would, and we would tell the state that, that's certain, and that would be enough to get them moving, because we would also say that we are hopeful for and asking for another 330,000 from CPC, but we've got to wait for town meeting. And obviously, if that comes in, it will go right into the deal. So that's sort of where we are, why we're here. I don't know what other questions you have, what other information you'd like us to provide. Connie, did I do what I was supposed to do?
You did.
Okay.
Yes. Great job.
Thank you.
Bob Williams.
So maybe if we could open up, Madam Chair, to the members of the committee and trust.
May I ask what, and I think Connie, you may have shared this before, but what is the total cost that for the whole project? You said there's 6 million required for renovations plus what's the total purchase price?
So the total cost for the entire deal, we call it total development cost, TDC in our business, will be around $40 million. You know, I've been the seller from the outset has been quite squirrely about confidentiality. And he knows that at some point, the purchase price will need to be disclosed widely and publicly. I tried really hard to get his consent for me to share it today. And he did not give me that consent. And so, you know, I wish I could give you the full sources and uses, and obviously, sooner rather than later, we will completely open our books so that you can see exactly, you know, what's going where and who's getting what.
Do you have a agreement with the state yet on the 35 vouchers?
Yeah.
And can we see a copy of that agreement? We would need to see how long they're for. I mean, in perpetuity, what is the anticipation of?
Right. So our use agreement, we expect that the regulatory agreement, the affordability covenants that we'll sign with the state will be perpetual. And we expect that part and parcel of that will be a commitment that we accept these vouchers for as long as they're offered and as long as the terms are materially similar. So, you know, if they pay $2,200 a month today, and in 20 years, the first 20-year contract expires, and they say, sorry, we're only going to pay you $1,000. Obviously, we can't commit to that. But as long as the terms are substantially similar to where we commit, we expect from past experience, Burke, correct me if I'm wrong, that the initial contract will be for either 15 or 20 years.
How is the MVP? I'm sorry, just quickly, how is the MVP voucher program funded? Is that funded through HUD?
It's the state,
State.
which is good
Annual-
news,
Yeah,
right? Because
state
we're all
appropriation.
scared about vouchers. And the answer is we don't have an agreement yet because we've got all these moving parts. And Bert and I have been working really hard to get the state to assign a closing attorney because we need to draft, for everybody's benefit, the affordability covenant.
Yep.
And whatever we all think about what that's going to look like, the state is going to be, you know, it's going to be, they're going to be the ones drafting it. We need, we're going to get, we anticipate the equivalent of what's called an AHAP, an agreement for a HAP contract. One of the nuances that almost killed this deal along the way was we had assumed that on the day we closed, we would get 35 vouchers and that they would pay the full MRVP rents from day one. Well, we discovered along the way that the voucher rents and will not kick in until a resident has been moved to a temporary unit, their unit has been rehabbed, they've been moved back, and the housing authority has inspected and approved the unit.
The unrenovated units in their current condition, we don't believe would qualify to get subsidy in their current state. So we're gonna have to renovate them before they will give us the subsidy contract.
So that's a ton of lost income, right? So instead of getting, $1,000 a month increase on day one, the current residents will continue to pay what they're paying until they get moved back, and then the rent will go up. So we're not going to have.
But we would have a contract before we started renovating these units. We wouldn't just be renovating the units hoping they give us subsidy at the end. We would have a contract that shows once we meet housing standards, they would start paying.
But that also needs to be negotiated. So again, we're pushing on the state to start drafting, right? We need them to assign lawyers and get going because we're burning daylight.
How long would these renovations of these units take?
So,
You want me to answer that, Rick? I mean,
sure.
Individually, the unit should take less than 8 weeks. We're anticipating probably even half that time on a per unit basis. There's a bit of time moving people in, moving them back, getting sign-offs and approvals from various town boards that need to qualify the unit as being habitable, all that kind of stuff. But the real issue is they won't all be done on the same day. We have to cycle folks through. So the overall process would likely take, I forget where we've last left off on our calculations, probably about 1.5 years, I think is where we last ended up on calculating if you do a whole bunch of units in succession at 8-week periods, where we end up. I have a whole calculation of that somewhere, but.
And the reason it's taking so long is because we're trying to be minimally disruptive to the current residents.
Yeah.
And we're trying to maintain occupancy because people need the housing. So the program is that we will have 3 units at a time being renovated. And we've gone round and round on the math and how long it takes to renovate and how long it takes to move them in and how long it takes to move them out. And our best guess is it'll be, 18 months to 24 months to go through 3 units at a time. We think that our contractor can work faster. Then critical path becomes how quickly can we get an overstretched housing authority, right, who's overworked like everybody else, to get in and certify the unit so that we can move them back and keep moving. That's the program.
The key, Bob, is we've got 3 vacant units. Our intent is not to evict any of the current tenants. So with 3 vacant units, you've got to move tenants to 1 or 2 or 3 of the vacant units, renovate the units that they came from, put them back in the renovated units, and then recycle those 3 vacant units again for another 3 tenants. So that's what's going to take the time to do.
I mean, the alternative would be sending a whole bunch of families into hotels for a couple of months, and not only would it be very disruptive to the families, it would be hugely expensive. So we'd be spending a significant portion of our budget on hotels that could be going into making the units rehabbed better.
And this is something that we've done a dozen times. Our contractor has done 100 times. And this one's relatively easy because when you think about, the layout of the units, packing people and moving them isn't that hard. There's no stairs, there's no elevator. Bert and I went through a occupied rehab of 97 units in downtown Boston, 5-floor walk-ups. That was an adventure. So this is easy.
Anybody else from the trust? Colleen?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I want to make sure I understand the what you said about the vouchers and how, you'll have a contract for 15 to 20 years, and then if it is not equivalent in price, then that would go away. But the units themselves would still remain
Yes, the
deed
units,
restricted, affordable housing.
Yes.
So that's not going to impact, because the money, even though it's coming from the trust, came from CPC. And so that's a
Yeah.
restriction.
the restriction on the units would be, as Rick said, in perpetuity. And reality, I think there's some state law that doesn't allow it to be drafted as perpetuity. It has to be read 99 years or something like that, but we'll all be dead. So someone else can deal with that problem. And the subsidy is really to increase the range of who can live in those units. It's widening the window of who can afford to be there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for explaining.
So are you saying that the deed restriction would be for 15 years for the low income 60% AMI because you don't know?
Nope, it
Okay,
will be for 99 years.
but where's the subsidy coming from?
A separate program. So the 99-year sub restriction would say for 99 years, these units need to be occupied by people below 60% of median income. But the way the rent setting and the state regulations works, that creates kind of a window, if you will, of people between, say, 50% of median income and 60% of median income that can afford to pay the rent that gets you in a 60% of median income unit. By having the voucher, you're opening that window of who can afford to live in that unit from people at 60% of median income, essentially all the way down to zero. And the subsidy program picks up the difference of what a portion of their income is. They would be paying 30% of their income, whether that's a third of 60% or whether that's $10, depending on what their income is. They'd pay a third of their income to live there, and the state would pay the other balance of the rent due on that unit.
I guess what I was asking was, if the voucher program disappears in 15 years, they
Yep.
would still have a deed restriction. Have you
Correct.
run the numbers on the project that it could support those deed restrictions? Because the
Yes.
subsidy has to come someplace.
Yes, no, they would still be able, what would happen, if someone was at 55% of median income and lived there when the voucher went away, there probably would be no difference in their life. It wouldn't really change much. If someone had an income of $5,000 a year and lived there and the voucher went away, they probably couldn't afford to live there anymore when that program wrapped up, and someone else would move in that would be a 60% of median income person still and able to afford the rent. It's just the breadth of people you could market the unit to if the voucher goes away would become a narrower income band than with the voucher in place.
But still within the 60% of AMI.
Still
Yes.
within the 60% of AMI. Is that making sense? It gets a little complicated, I agree.
No, it totally makes sense. I just, so what do you think you'll have a commitment on how long we can definitely count on the vouchers? Because I think what we're selling is the vouchers to a certain extent.
I think the term would be either 15 or 20 years, and they typically renew at the end of that, but you can't renew now. You have to renew when year 15 rolls around.
We will get, and we will push for the longest possible
Rick,
contract,
yeah, Rick,
right?
can you repeat that? Because we had an echo.
Sorry, we will push the state for whatever the longest statutorily possible contract is that they have, because it's in everybody's interest. That's our goal, and that's all part of it. That's, again, it's why we've got to get to the state, because a lot of these things are going to be conversations. And remember, the 10.8 million indirectly buys down the rent so that we cap 35 units at 60% of AMI. Because without that 10.8 million, we'd have to raise more private equity. And the only way that we could raise the private equity is to give them a return. And the only way to give them a return is to charge higher rents. So part of that 10.8 is buying down the units to a maximum of 60%.
So if we were to go ahead and say, let's give you your $240,000 and hold, well, we would have to hold a public hearing, of course, and all that. You're still got some other, like obstacles like CPC money that has to be voted on. Like you don't have the deal yet, so to speak. Just one step in the deal. So what would happen, number one, with the 240,000 that this trust would, earmark for you, and help me out here. Like what has to happen?
So do you mean if the deal doesn't close? So if the deal doesn't close, your check only gets written. We'll come in with the Fannie Mae mortgage and the private equity, and
It would come in at closing, and if there's no closing, you don't write a check.
You're on mute.
Bob, you're on mute.
Of course, right. But
so the what is uncertain and is, will the state sign off on everything without a firm commitment? Because will the state write their check for 10.8? If we were to go to back to the state and say, look, we think we're going to be able to get you a non-trivial amount of financial support from the town, but we're really not going to know till like a week before we close, when there's a vote. I don't know what they will say. Look, if I were a betting man, they'd say, screw it, we're giving you the money anyway. This project is too important. We're not going to lose it over that. But I just don't know. Again, I know that it's very important to them to see that, which is why from a timing standpoint, getting all of our ducks in a row, the sooner we have a firm commitment, the easier it's going to be for us to get the rest of that money in the door. Does that make sense?
yes,
Bob,
yes.
Okay,
Look, I may be hurting my cause. I'd be lying to you if I said, if you guys don't give us any money, there's no deal. The state's going away. I mean, I would hope and pray that wouldn't happen, but it certainly greases the wheels and increases the probability of getting this thing with so many complexities to go if we can have an actual firm commitment, well ahead of the state having to pony up its money.
okay, Rick, I think we understand that, you need town funds to show that leverage from the town supporting it to get the state money. All right, Ken, I do see your hand up. However, let me go ahead and just make sure that if anybody else from the trust has got any other questions.
Hi, this is Sean. I think Alicia mentioned this, but I just want to kind of clarify, is there any way that we could get from the state, they're looking for a commitment from us and a guarantee. Can we get a letter from them stating that they're going to give you the 10.8 or like?
We're working so hard on that. I wish I had that. I'm still up all night every night wondering if they're going to show up. Bert, go ahead.
Yeah, no. We've had extensive conversations back and forth with them. We expect to be getting a letter soon. We don't have the letter yet. Very difficult. It is a very much chicken and egg kind of process in trying to get enough information to them to make them give us a letter. We are operating outside of their regular funding rounds. They've given us special privileges to operate. They typically do one funding round a year, and if you don't win in that one, you come back next year and try again, and they've waived that for us. So we're we're in a good position and that we have essentially an ongoing conversation with them to get this funded and closed. Normally they won't pick up the phone and talk to folks that do what we do. They just say, get in line, send your application. You'll either get a yes or a no. And if you get a no, come back next year and try again. So a short answer is we don't have that letter for you, but we expect to do it. And what typically is done in these situations is both sides write their letters on a conditional basis. So they all pin it on the other guy to come through with their letter. And therefore you can all feel comfortable about writing your letter because it's totally contingent upon the other people performing.
And then just a follow up, what is the minimum local, what is the minimum that the state's looking for a local requirement?
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah, there's no real amount. They will look to see that it's something substantive. We did a project in a small community a year or two ago, and we were also asked for a community match there. And the town's first response was, well, we will repave the sidewalks up to your project. That failed. The second response was we would give you, I can't remember what they were doing, but they kept trying to have us sort of in-kind contributions, and the state kept saying, no, that doesn't really satisfy what we want to see. Ultimately, they did come up with a cash contribution, and I don't remember what the amount was there, but the state's got a lot of information in front of them. They know what all towns' capacities are, and they're not looking to be unreasonable. But they want to know that it's not a blow-off kind of contribution, that it's a real effort on the part of the town.
And Sean, to answer your question more directly, the state will not give us a figure. That so.
And they will generally accept any figure that's
reasonable.
A reasonable effort. Yes, like I said, if you wrote a $5,000 check, they might say that's not quite what we were looking for. But there is no real answer to this.
All right. Anybody else from the trust?
But by the way, the total contribution of $570,000 that we're looking for from the town wasn't a figure that was pulled out of the air. And I think Rick and Al could better confirm this, but the renovation costs were earmarked at about $5.7 million for the 35 units. So the $570,000 becomes 10% of what it's going to cost to renovate those units. And that would be a big help.
All right. Thank you for that, Connie. I know that it was like 5,000 per 114 units, and I think
But we were asked to kind of juggle that around a little bit so that we could justify it for just the 35 units, and then it just kind of hit us in the face that the renovation costs were 5.7 million. So it didn't take rocket science to figure out that 10% was what we were looking for a match from the town.
Okay, so really you're focusing still on the 35 units, not all 114.
The 35 units for the local contribution by the town, yes.
And I'm sorry, just not to harp on that, but so your estimate to renovate each unit is somewhere north of $150,000 per unit?
So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So in addition to renovating the units, as we sit here today, the expectation is that it's 105 or 110,000 a unit to renovate 29 of the 35. There'll be 6 units that will be renovated to be handicapped accessible. And the estimate there is that those, believe it or not, will cost 180,000 a unit. The rest of what's in that scope has to do with cleaning up some landscaping, fixing some crawl spaces that Brady fixed to provide moisture.
Yeah, there's a number of shared elements, roofs, basements, that kind of thing, which aren't
Yeah.
specific to individual units that need issues addressed with them.
And trust me, we've beaten that budget to within an inch of its life. And you know, there's no fat. It's a very, very tight deal, for lots of reasons. You know, not the least of which is that we've got, instead of public sources for the whole deal, low-income housing tax credits, we've got private equity, that you know, is writing the check, and they're limited as to how big a check they will write. So, you know, it's trust me. I said, go get a guy in a truck, right? How could it cost that much money? And you know, once you take state money in this magnitude, you've got all kinds of extra hurdles to jump through, including you need a specific kind of architect that's trusted by the state. You need the right engineers. I wish it were as easy as getting a guy in a truck, because, you know, we all know what, if it was our house, what we could rehab it for, and it probably wouldn't be, you know, over 100,000.
And in the cost for that, does that include the units that have already been renovated by Brady in case he didn't bring them up to code?
No, and we've been through virtually all of the 114 units, and we were really, when we initially underwrote our construction budget, we expected that there would be non-trivial amounts of rework that would need to be done in the event that Brady didn't do good work. We were very pleasantly surprised, and we really don't believe that, except for, you know, routine maintenance and you know, replacing, you know, a dishwasher if it breaks or something like that, we're not really going to have to do anything on those units.
How many units? 114 units is the number you're using for the 40 million?
Yes.
So you're paying, so it's 350,000 a unit? Is that one side or two sides of a duplex?
That's
Per unit.
It's an average
Yeah,
on per unit,
yeah.
because there's some 6-unit buildings, there's some 2-unit buildings, so there's a mix of
Right,
different types of buildings.
so if you have I understand. So a duplex, 2 units,
Yeah,
is that 350,000 per side?
per
'Cause
door.
if you divide 114 by,
Per
I'm
door,
sorry,
yeah.
yeah. Really? So 700,000 a building?
Yeah.
On a duplex?
Yeah. And that too, you sit here and you know, it blows your mind. But
In a town where the average price is about 550.
yes,
That's for a 4-bedroom colonial, 2.5 bath, 1
Yep.
acre of land.
and a lot of that is in the rehab. Remember, this is the total development cost. What's amazing is, and we find this, one of the things that the state loves about this deal is that the total development cost per unit is only $350,000 only, right? And we all sit here and say only. If Bert and I were to go out, and I think you're seeing this on your other deal, if Bert and I were to go and try to build 50 or 60 units using low-income housing tax credits anywhere in the state, total development cost is going to be north of 800,000 a unit. So the state loves the idea that they can invest in this housing and preserve this housing as affordable for the long term for only 350,000 a unit.
Yeah, so, okay.
I mean, again, I
of-
scratch my head all the time too.
I can think of other sections of town where that would work too. I mean, it's it's really kind of absurd when you come down to that price. They're not worth, the building's not worth 700,000, even all fixed up. So how do you, in the end, how is this a positive for you as a group?
Um, it's it's barely positive at this point, I'll tell you, and I'm not complaining. So it's
Well,
The-
first and foremost, it preserves housing for 114 families.
No, that wasn't really my question. My question was, how is this a good deal for the, or, you know,
for the
The
sponsors.
developer?
Yeah.
So we will collect rents, we will pay operating expenses, and we will pay debt service. And what's left will go to our private equity investor. And the investor will get something like 5 or 6% a year. So if the investor put in 10 million, they'd get what, 60,000 a year. Yeah, is that right?
No,
600,000. Sorry, 600,000. And then part of the other great part of this deal is that the tenants association will have an option to buy at the back end. And it's projected that when it gets sold, the combination of the annual distributions and the sales proceeds they'll keep above the mortgage will get them somewhere in the high single digit 10-year return on average annual return on investment, IRR, internal rate of return, which is not, to your point, not a very good number in typical private equity, in typical real estate finance, right? People are looking for mid-teens. Unless you can give me 15%, I'm not interested, is what most people say.
right.
This fund is a double bottom line fund that basically aggregates banks' money so that banks can get credit under the Community Preservation Act, right? So banks have to put money back into the community. So they, instead of finding their own deals, they write checks to these guys and they put it out. So they will accept a way below market return.
So you said it would preserve housing for 100, affordable for 114 families, but that's not actually true, right? Because over 70 of those units are going to can be market rate, and only 35 of them are going to be affordable.
No. Go ahead, Rick.
So the other 79 units will be deed restricted for people that make no more than 80% of area median income. And the rents will be capped at 30% of 80% of area median income. The state will not let us displace people. So, if somebody's making 120% of area median income, they can stay as long as they want. But when they leave, we will have a waiting list of folks who make 80% of area median income or less. And within 3, 5, 7 years, hopefully, the entire property will be occupied by 114 households making less than 80% of area median income. 35 of those making less than 60% of area median income.
Okay, and does that mean then that does that mean that the rents that people are currently paying, which are way above average for this area, that they would be reduced, or will they just stay where they're at and go up from there?
They will stay where they are, and they will stay where they are. And right now, the way that area median income is calculated, the rents are below 30% of 80%. The rents that he's getting, when all of what, as we start to swap people in who are qualified for 80%, its total housing cost has to be 30% of 80%.
What do you mean by that?
Which includes, a discount for utilities. So it right now, get the ratio of what he's getting to the 30 of 80 rents, no one's going to get a bargain. However, rents will only be able to be increased every year by the change in area median income. So they're getting the benefit of, if the market runs away, they're capped, and they'll never pay more than 30% of 80%.
And that 30% of 80% includes utilities. So it's not just rent, it's rent plus utilities.
Right.
Did Ken have a question?
Ken had to leave. He had another meeting at 7. I forgot about it, so I do apologize to Ken with regards to that. I did ask him if he wanted to leave me the question, but he has not, because he went to the 7 o'clock meeting.
So I have a quick question. Will you have the commitment before closing from the state on the vouchers, the deed restriction, and all those things?
Yes, that's part and parcel of
We
the
wouldn't be able to
closing binder that's going to be this high.
we wouldn't be able
Nobody's
to close
writing
without
checks
them.
until all that's secured.
Okay.
I've got just a couple questions because learned something else new today. You did state that the vouchers, when they're for like 10, maybe 15 years, there's going to be a separate program that will kick in. Do you know what that program is after for the subsidy?
What's happened since the beginning of time, and knock wood, keeps happening, is you get to year 15 and you just sign a new 15-year contract for the vouchers.
Right, but that's, again, you're putting eggs in a basket. What if they don't renew it?
Then the units are still deed restricted,
Correct.
79 at 30 of 80 and 35 at 30 of 60.
Right, so where does the other subsidy? I think Alicia asked that. When you
The subsidy
There is no
is-
other subsidy.
when the
The
other
subsidy's
subsidy,
coming in now at closing. And the transaction would just collect those rents at that point in time. If the voucher goes away, the subsidy for the other folks is what we call it's a self-pay unit. The rent has been reduced by a capital subsidy, but there is no operating subsidy coming to the tenant to pay the rent. They are paying the rent themselves entirely, but they're paying a below market rent. What the subsidy does is reduce the below market rent even further for other people to be able to afford an even lower rent.
so those 79 units that are paying, again, still below the 30% of the 80%, those individuals are really helping with the additional subsidy should those vouchers go away.
Yes, cross subsidizing to make the total rent collections be okay.
Okay.
One more question. Have you, in your budgets, will you be able to show us the budgets for running the property? Will there be, if it was a condominium, there would be a condominium fee that goes into a fund to take care of renovations and things like that. Will there be money put in there, and will you be starting out with a fund beyond the renovations? And can we see those budgets?
Yes and yes. So we when we want to leave the closing table with enough money between the construction budget and an initial deposit to a replacement reserve. Plus, we're going to be depositing $500 per unit per year, which will go up by 3% a year into replacement reserves. So the sum of that number is going to be, I forget, it's going to be $7.5 million. So when we leave the closing table, we will have $7.5 million available to make sure that we can take care of the property for 10 years till the sale. That's about 65,000 per unit, if my math is right.
And what will you leave once you sell it at the 10-year mark in that reserve?
What typically happens is the buyer, because they're using a bunch of public sources generally, the buyer brings its own reserves. And so whatever is left over, if there's anything left over, usually reverts back to the seller and is replaced by new reserves, right? So I'm raising capital, and part of my capital is going to put a bunch of money into reserves. The next buyer will do the same thing, right? The Brady is not leaving anything behind that he might have reserved, right?
Yes,
And so we're very cognizant. We're long-term owners. I've never sold anything. I've sold one deal in my entire career, 44-unit deal in Cambridge. So we care about taking care of the asset and making sure that we don't shortchange it, and that we're not going to have to go back to our investor or write a check ourselves because, we forgot to put away money for a roof that's going to go bad in 10 years. So everything that we did with our construction contract and with our development budget was for making sure that we can take care of this thing well for 10 years. So great question.
Then my question, it goes right after that. After the 10 years, does the Devon's Crest Tenants Association know who they could possibly ask for to purchase? I mean, look at the difficult time you've had with Brady Sullivan. What's going to end up happening after, again, you leave within the 10, 15 years? One, you got, issues with the vouchers, but then you also need to have the association step up and try to find investors. I know.
So the part of what we're going to do over 10 years is help train the tenants on how to operate multifamily housing, and how the whole financing programs work. As we sit here today, the expectation is that the tenants will use all sort of public sources, with low-income housing tax credits providing the lion's share of what they need above whatever they can borrow. The part of why it was harder now is because of something called the 10-year hold rule. If we had bought this directly from Tachi, who held it forever, we could have bought it. DCTA could have and would have, and this was the original plan, would have bought it using low-income housing tax credits. Unfortunately, the law says that unless you've held a property for 10 years, you're not eligible for low-income housing tax credits. So that's part of the rationale behind the 10-year hold. So the DCTA can close into a tax credit deal, the day after 10 years that we've held it. So that's the expectation. No one knows what the world's going to look like in 10 years.
Will there be a written-in cap on what the Devon's Crest Tenants Association will pay for the property? I mean, will there be a structure for getting a price for it for when they buy it?
Another great question. We are working feverishly on an option agreement as we speak
Okay.
that gets so DCTA will have a unequivocal option. And to your point, Alicia, the at what price? And so that's what we're sort of talking through. And it's balancing what the equity partner needs for a return versus, how much upside they're going to be willing to give up, right? Because at the limit, you say, if we paid $10 million today and it's worth 30 million when we expect it to only be worth 20 million in 10 years and it's worth 30, boy, big windfall for the investor. So how do we come to terms with the DCTA to somehow share that extra reward when thinking about the fact that it's the folks who are writing the equity check who are taking all the financial risk? So we're working on that.
Well, deed restrictions, I mean, on owner units are very clear about what the capital gain can be on that. And so, I mean, if you can do a percentage or something like that, it has to be because a restricted unit is worth less, not that it doesn't take a lot of capital to put it together, but it's worth less on the market because it makes less of an income. And so that has to be really measured because I really see where the failure can be is if you get the numbers wrong and the property can't support itself.
No, all true. And we're talking through that and trying to come to something. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's the person who's writing the really big, 8-figure check that's going to have to now they're double bottom line, and so they're not going to be crazy greedy, but they're going to have to agree with something that works for them. That they can make their return. So we're working on that, and I'm very confident that we'll come to something that works. And remember, we don't know what the world is going to look like. We don't know what sources of funds are going to be available. We just don't know. But when we started this whole thing, there were two goals: DCTA ownership and preservation. And unfortunately, because of the 10-year hold rule, we couldn't get both at the same time. So right now we're going for preservation with the expectation that we will get DCTA ownership in 10 years. If somehow programs don't exist, DCTA doesn't exist, who knows what'll happen. What you can be comfortable with is that those deed restrictions, right, survive whether DCTA buys it or whether anybody else buys it. So the preservation is perpetual.
Well, I think something that I think would be a much easier sale for the community is what we're buying is those vouchers. And having a clearer understanding and maybe even the tie of the vouchers to the town, as well as the units is something that would, that's just a thought. I'm just speaking out.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Yeah. Let us know how that would work. Again, we're happy to talk through that. Look, we're trying to make it with everybody that we talk to, debt, equity, the state, you all. We're trying to make this all as easy as possible for everyone. So we're open to anything. Whatever you would suggest. I mean, the subsidy will live with the units, right? Which are here in Ayer. They're not mobile, right? So it's not like if you got some mobile vouchers, they could take them to Arizona and now you've lost it. So you do have those units as long as MRVP exists.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick, quick question. When you're saying with the units, I just want to make sure it's going to be with the actual building, not the Devon's Crest Tenants Association as being the you know, the manager or whatever.
It's going to be permanently with the actual unit. And
Okay.
if somebody is occupying one of those units and they leave,
Right,
we
stays.
take somebody off a waiting list who income qualifies, they move into that unit and they get that subsidy.
Yeah, no, I understand project based, so, okay. Any other questions? I know that we've got a call-in user one, but hold on a second before I do that. Any other questions from the trust, the board, the committee? Bill, are you raising your hand? No, okay. And I see, like I say, a call-in user one or an iPhone 2. Don't know who those individuals are. So I didn't know if there was anything from the public. I think, you know, again, we've got, oh, all right. Call-in user number one. Go ahead.
I'm just a member of the public, and I've been working with the DCTA people, and I really thank you for considering this project. Thank you so much. This housing is so sorely needed. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who is it? So that Cindy can take it for notes. Who am I speaking to?
It's Tara from Acton. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Cindy, do you know Tara from Acton? Okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right, because I think we've got, you know, I mean, I believe the trust has got enough information. The board is here, you know, the committee is here to go ahead and assist the trust board as well with some of the questions and answers. We know how to get in touch with Connie, which we will definitely do. And if we have any other questions, Rick and Bert, again, we can go ahead and reach out. I know that you're getting some documents together, hopefully for July 2nd for the CPC meeting. Again, the other hat, but I won't really bring that up. And with that, to let you know that you met with the CPC in June 4th. So, we'll, like I said,
CPC is July 2nd, I believe.
that's right. Yeah, but you said that you met in May, at the beginning of the presentation. You met us in the beginning of June, and now we have this. So with that,
So is Madam Chair, is the next step for the trust to schedule a public hearing, or is there to be another interim meeting?
the trust needs to go ahead and discuss it amongst themselves. And I know that one of the things on the agenda is to state when their next meeting is. I will believe, you know, I'll have the trust talk amongst themselves, whether or not July 30th may be too late, if they might be able to do something earlier. I know that the committee is going to be meeting July 19th at 10 o'clock. So we'll, you know, be discussing on how we can reach out and help out the trust, because again, that was something that the committee wanted to make sure we had funds. So to answer your question, the next step is the trust board needs to meet, and they have to figure out exactly when they're going to be meeting. Once that happens, then they'll be back in touch with you, Connie.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Okay. All right, there's nothing else, then no other questions and comments. I'm just gonna go ahead and say thank you so much again for the presentation. There's always, like, say, something new that's brought up. And we'll go ahead and look at all and review it. So with that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Chairwoman, and thank you to all of your committee and trust members as well.
You got it. It's a good group. All right.
Thank you all.
Rick,
Stay cool.
Thank you all.
thank you. Bill, take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
So before my trust leaves too quickly,
Well, yeah, go ahead.
did we adjourn?
No, we have not adjourned yet.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we
Okay.
haven't. And neither has really I'm seeing people drop. Yeah, and neither has the committee because we need to finish the agenda.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, go ahead, Alicia.
Alicia,
No,
I'm
no.
just curious as to what you think about all this. Do you think this is a good deal, or do you think, like it does sound like unbelievably expensive to the cost they're talking about to renovate these units, but he answered that question. But what do you think about this deal for the town and for the people in Devon's Crest?
Who were you asking?
You.
Oh, so I quickly did the numbers out for the project on Fitchburg Road, which is new construction from the ground up. And that's actually a pretty good deal at $566 a unit. Okay. Building affordable units, you're building in the subsidy. So it is expensive. For those 106 units, the CPC has put up 400, has committed 400,000 for that. And that was for phase one. Now I think the vouchers, this is why I keep pushing on the vouchers, but it's a question on how long the vouchers are for and how they're written. But vouchers that subsidize families in the town, those families would pay only 30% of that. So they would, the voucher pays like the 2,400 a month, but the family pays 30% of that, okay, of their income. So that brings money in, and that is very valuable. 35 vouchers are valuable for the town. And that's why I keep going back and forth on this. I think we need to have a full committee, and we need to get our committee. Jeff has stepped down because he was the representative from the planning board, and he stepped down from the planning board. So we need to get our committee put together. We need to discuss it amongst ourselves, and then we need to vote whether we want to move on to a public hearing and things like that. And what we would need from them to be able to move forward, like, how the vouchers are structured. When would they get the money if we voted for it, tied to vouchers and deed restrictions, things like that. So the deed restriction has value. I still question, it's really hard to have private equity that wants to make a profit on a fully restricted project. Usually it's a nonprofit that runs them. So seeing the budgets and seeing the numbers are important.
We've got Dan Carlson, the lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Showed up. Dan, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I didn't have anything to add at this time. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Joanne.
All right. Okay, so to answer your question, Bob, really the trust needs to go ahead and meet and discuss and let Alicia run her numbers. And again, Colleen is the CPC committee member on the trust. So with that, she does know that we have asked for documentation for July 2nd, because before we can move forward, we definitely need to know what we're going to be funding. Alicia's correct that if we do have the vouchers will help the town. So you could almost do a funding, given the funding on conditions, and they've even said it, that it's all conditional, on a conditional basis. And that's how it's going to be for the state. That's how it can be for the trust. And that's how it can be also for CPC, because again, it's all based on the conditions that it stays affordable. And, and there can be specific, concerns of, all right, they're going to train, the Devon's Crest Tenants Association on how to take over in 10 years. Who knows, again, if that's going to be still in existence. You know, it's things like that where, and again, CPC does have grant agreements that they have to, you know, confirm with. So you're going, the trust is going to have to meet. And my question is, I think you guys need to meet before July 30th. That's all.
And I'd like to say that anybody who thinks they might want to step into the position of chair, please think about it, reach out to me. Or nominate yourself right now.
So I wanted to step out of the position of clerk.
Okay.
I was expecting this to be my last clerk.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah. You know, if it becomes a super issue, we can renegotiate and I will work for chocolate. But
I got some Dove Bar for you.
I don't think that's going to be good enough chocolate.
Alicia, do we have a new planning board?
Not yet. This happened very quickly.
Gotcha.
So we will be requesting a new planning board member at the next planning board meeting. And everybody think about your schedule. We only have 4 of you here right now. We have Chris Valentine who'd like to step up as a member. I know that Jeff wouldn't mind being a at-large member. So, and we need a planning board member. So we can take a look at all that. And does anybody have any ideas of when they would like to meet? July gets tough. Everybody goes on vacation.
Well, I think it's absolutely essential that we do it before the 30th. That's just too tight on time. And we do not need an entire month to just spin our wheels and think about this. Let's just get together in another couple of weeks. I probably not next week because that's the July 4th weekend, but maybe the 9th. And just get this.
Yeah.
Make a decision.
Questions?
What's that?
I just say we need to make a decision.
Yeah.
I just feel that with 4 people, we can't make the decision with only 4 people here.
I agree, but if people don't show up, I don't know what else to say. I'm tired of people not showing up and we just drag and not make decisions.
Well, let's reach out to a couple people and see if we can expand the board a little bit and make sure they're on up to speed on it. I am not going to be here the 9th, but we could do it a different day in that week if people wanted to do it a different day. Well, the 9th is a Wednesday, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, I can be here the 9th. Okay, sorry.
That would be my preference for personally.
Okay, July 9th. So I'll do a poll tomorrow. I'll write notes to everybody and see if that's going to work, and I'll check with Carly and Max and see if it'll work.
All right, and does the board mind if I step in and help Alicia? You know, and try to find some additional members?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and
maybe someone who wants to be chair.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
Not me.
All right, no problem. As long as, you know, I see Cindy shaking her head. Pat and Sean, is that going to be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So Alicia, I'll meet with you and we'll go ahead and try to figure out. So I think the group will be meeting on the, as it stands right now, we'll try to get it on the 9th. I'll help you with Max and with Carly. And then we can discuss.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll make a vote on whether we want to move forward, whether we want to have a public hearing, all those kinds of things. So that would be good.
Is the hearing required? I would have assumed that it would be. Yes, Robert shaking his head yes. So yeah, that's why I think it's important to do it fast because we've got to get a hearing in.
Yeah.
Right. And for an announcement, you need 2 weeks prior to make that announcement. So it has to be twice inside the newspaper.
Well, the other thing that I would like to do is I'd like us to reach out maybe to council on how, what kind of, requirements we would be putting forward for, we would give this money contingent upon a public hearing, or even we'll move forward to a public hearing, and then what kind of requirements we would put on the agreement.
Correct, yep, and that's why Robert's here. So he knows that we've got to get in touch with town council. All right. If there's nothing else, I'd like to go ahead and just make sure, okay, so the trust is going to, again, work on the meeting on the 9th, and then have another meeting on the 30th per se. And then the committee, we've got a meeting on July 19th at 10 o'clock. That will be in person at Town Hall. All right, Ron? I don't know what happened to Dave, and I'll make sure that everybody gets the announcement. If there's
The
not,
19th is a Saturday. Are you sure you mean 19th?
The 9th.
oh no, it's the 18th. It's the 18th.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, typo.
Thank you. It's a
No
typo.
worries.
Okay, so there is an amendment to the agenda. Yeah, it's the 18th, and I already have the room reserved, so it's all set. Okay, so we've got that, and if anybody can make it, if anybody from the trust wants to come, again, it's in person, it's an open meeting at Town Hall. If there's nothing else, the committee, again, most of my committee members are gone. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting, Ron?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right,
Second.
well, hold on a second. All in favor from the committee? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, go ahead, Rob. Go ahead, Bob.
Aye. Move to
Did you make a
adjourn.
motion? Yep.
I
Bob,
move to adjourn.
you got it. So the trust now is also adjourned. All right, everybody, thank you so much for all this. More information will be coming one way and another.